Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. I'm Chris, and in this episode, I'm going on my first ever poker cruise to Alaska. The cruise leaves from Seattle, so I'm meeting up with my high school friend Cooper, who lives here. While in Seattle, I make sure to eat some Asian food, pick up some sweet records. This cruise is booked through Card Player Cruises. It's a 7-night cruise that runs 1-3 and 2-5 on Royal Caribbean's Quantum of the Seas. The cruise costs $1,200, so my goal this episode is to pay for the trip while cruising. The poker room has food, drinks, great dealers, and ocean view windows. Okay, without further ado, let's get into some hands. In the first hand, my opponent opens to 20 in the cutoff. I 3-bet King Jack suited from the small blind, and after a long tank, he calls. The flop comes 986 rainbow, which is not great. My opponent's more likely to have sets, two pairs, all the good hands in me, but I do have two overs and some nice backdoor draws, so I see bet, which I think is fine, but in hindsight, I would have preferred going larger, and he calls. The turn is an ace, which is also not great. I should probably just give up, but I'm thinking I might be able to tell the story that I have a hand like ace king or ace queen here. So I continue small and get quickly called. Now I'm concerned. I don't think I'm good, but I river a pair of kings, which is some showdown value. I beat a lot of straight draw hands like Jack 10, 10 9, 8 7, 7 6. So I give up, I check it over to my opponent, and he checks back, and I lose to ace 10. In the next hand, I defend King Jack off in the big blind versus a hijack open, and I flop a gut shot to the nuts on Queen 9 8 two-tone. My opponent c bets, and I make a little bit of a speculative call here out of position. The turn pairs the board, brings in the flush. I check, and my opponent checks back. And the river is a brick. I've got bupkis here, but I think I can credibly rep a flush or something. I don't know. I bet 100 into 70. My opponent doesn't look like he believes me, but he makes the fold, and I take it down. After that, my camera died, and I left my charger in my room, but I played a couple notable hands I'm going to show you guys. In the first one, the cutoff opens, button flats, and I squeeze in the small blind of queens, and we go heads up. The flop comes Jack 10 10 rainbow, and these double Broadway boards are almost always good for the three better because you have all the boats and all repairs and high equity straight draws. So I go ahead and range bet, and my opponent calls. We get an 8 on the turn, which seems pretty decent because in the event my opponent has a 10, I do pick up a gut shot for some emergency outs. I think it makes sense to continue milking here, try to get a little bit of value out of a jack or maybe like 9 8. So I bet, and rather than call, my opponent moves all in. My hand's pretty good here. I don't think there's any folding it. So I flick it in and I get crushed by pocket eights. Not pretty. A little bit later, I defend Jack 10 suited versus a hijack open, and we go three ways to a flop of Jack 10 8 two-tone. Pretty strong hand here, but it is a very wet flop, so that is concerning. I check it to the pre-flop aggressor. He bets half pot. The button calls and I decided to raise. I went for this size of 100, which I think is a little small. I was worried about bloating the pot on such a wet board, but I just end up getting called twice and we get an ugly 7 on the turn. So I end up check folding here after the preflop aggressor bets and the button snap calls. I don't really see any way we can really be good here. We're drawing thin to boat up. The pre-flop aggressor bet small on the river, and he's just got ace jack and gets max value. Uh, what can you do? So that brings me to the end of day one, starting $1,200 in the hole. Plenty of poker to go though. Day two is a C day, so the tables are running all day long. Here, there's a couple of limps. I raised to 30 on the button with 9-7 of clubs, and Tim, who gets credit for being the first fan of the vlog, calls from the low jack. The flop comes King Jack 8, so I have a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. Tim leads 25, and I make the call. I turn a 9, which is not a great card. Does give me a pair, but now rivering a 10 means I lose to any queen. So when he continues, I decide to let it go. And he tables ace 7, complete air. So shout out to Tim. In this hand, the hijack limps, the small blind ices to 20. I free bet to 60 with 10s in the big blind, just hoping to get it heads up, but they both call. Good news is I flop middle set on Jack 10-3. I continue small and go heads up with just the hijack. The turn is a king. Ace queen gets there, which is a bit concerning. I don't know if my opponent's limping that, but in general, this is a pretty good card for me. It might be harder to get value here, but I think we can certainly get called by a lot of pair plus straight draw type hands. So I continue small on the turn, planning to bomb most rivers. He calls, and the river is an ugly queen. Any ace makes a straight. I bet a little under 20% pot, just trying to get to showdown here. And luckily, he doesn't raise, he just calls. So I think I'm good, but I get shown ace queen for the nuts. Good river for us, actually. We saved money. Here, the hijack opens. I three bet the button with jacks, and we go heads up. The flop comes queen high. She leads, and there's nothing to do here but call. The turn is a king. She checks. I think there's some merit to betting small here to check back the river, but I opt to check back. And on the river, she blocks. I'm wondering if I can fold here. I spent a bit of time in the tank. It really looks like a queen, but I'm getting 4-1 on my money. And I start wondering if she has a hand like tens or nines. So I flick it in, but no, she's got ace queen. Here there's a straddle, and I open ace jack off and the low jack to 20. We're about 800 effective with the straddle. We go four ways with the blinds and flop top on a pretty clean board here. I see bet small. Tim check raises from the small blind to 75, and I call. The turn is a queen, which is not ideal, but I don't see a lot of hands that actually connect with it. He bets half pot, and I call. On the river, I'm a bit nervous he's going to bomb it, but when he bets quarter pot against the sizing, there's nothing to do but call, and he mucks. So it feels good to finally drag a pot. This hand is also straddled 2-5-10 with an effective stack of 500, so we are playing short stack here. I ISO a limp in the cutoff with king 10 off, and I flop top pair on 10-9-7. Definitely worth a C bet, so I bet a third, and my opponent raises small, still calling, and I turn top two. This is definitely the best card in the deck. If we were deeper, maybe I would be worried about queen jack, but with about 450 back, I'm definitely trying to play for everything. So he blocks 45 into 240, and I take a minute to consider jamming here. If he has a pair plus straight draw, it's very likely he's going to call, but this is Tim. I've seen him bluff a couple times. So I decide it's probably best to give him some rope and see what he does on the river. The river breaks out the flush draw, but does pair the 9. He blocks one more time, and now I do jam. I'm happy to fade the snap. He does make the call. I show king 10, and he shows us ace 10. So pretty nice turn there. Feeling the cards turn around for us. Here I open jacks from early position. You might notice I sometimes min raise when I have poor position, and I just do this so I can play a wider range and keep pots small when I'm out of position. But the difference between opening 2 and 3 big blinds isn't too important. But basically, my rationale is it allows me to play as loose as possible. I can get some cheap flops, and against some opponents, if incites chaos, throws them off their game. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. But anyways, two players call, and the big blind squeezes to 140. I make the call, we go four ways, and we get a bit of a dangerous flop here, 7-6 deuce. I don't really know where I'm at. The three better continues for 225. I don't have a heart in my hand, and I'm concerned already, but folding the flop just feels too weak. So I call, And unfortunately, the small blind jams, big blind snap jams. I quickly fold, and the small blind has a set of sixes. The big blind squeezer has ace king of hearts, and he breaks out. In this one, I open the hijack with ace nine of diamonds and the cutoff three bets. Seems like a good hand to call, so I go ahead and call on flop top pair on ace eight seven rainbow. I check call the flop. The turn goes check check, and on the river, think, especially with an ace whose kicker plays, I have to go for a bit of value, so I block targeting lower pocket pairs or maybe an ace with no kicker, and he calls, and I scoop. Finally, I open ace king suited from the low jack, and a player who calls himself Tight Brandon three bets from the hijack. Definitely gonna four bet this versus Mr. Tight Brandon's range.
Uh-oh, he's like, this is gonna be content. How much is it?
225. He calls, and I flop top pair on king jack four. Definitely a range bet spot here. So I bet small, and he calls. The turn is a 10, which is pretty bad behind ace queen and sets and potentially aces. So it's going to be difficult to get called by worse here. I check it over to him, and he checks back. The river completes the flush, and maybe I should be concerned here, but it's worth noting the king of hearts and the jack of hearts are on board. So I'm really worried about a hand like ace 10 of hearts, maybe queen 10 of hearts. Don't expect Brandon to check back the turn if he had two pair or a set. I think he would probably hero me if I bet here with a hand like queens. So this is risky, but I go for a chunky bet of 450. Luckily, I fade the snap. I'm worried this bet was too greedy and maybe he's just going to call with ace king and we're going to chop. But he flicks in the call and we are good. He shows us ace jack offsuit and I scoop a nice one. And I celebrated the win with Cooper or a romantic candlelit dinner. After day two, my losses have been reduced to just over $400. The next day was our first stop of the cruise, which was at Icy Strait Point and Hoona, Alaska. Hoona is a bustling metropolis with a population of about 600 people. We ate some halibut, watched some whales breach from land, and drank with the locals. If you're there and you see Gabe, tell him Chris says hi. We went on a kayaking tour where we got to eat some kelp and learn about the Tlingit people, which was super peaceful. Okay, we're back in open waters, so the poker continues. I open the hijack with ace jack suited, the cutoff three bets, and I call. I get a beautiful jack 6-4 rainbow flop. My opponent c bets, and I put in a small check raise, just trying to get a float from a hand like ace king, maybe pocket tens. He calls, and the turn is a 10. All right, slow down here, just trying to play a bit of pot control in case he has an overpair and hopefully induce a bluff, but he, however, checks back. I'm ready to bet the river until I see it's a king. My hand just significantly downgraded, so I check it one more time. Luckily, my opponent bets small. I make an easy call and I win versus a bricked draw. In this one, the short stack limps under the gun, and I am next to act with queens. Of course, there's nothing wrong here with ISOing and making the straightforward play, but in early position, I thought it was an interesting spot to throw in a trap for the larger stacks who might want to ISO the short stack. So I left behind, the button raises to 30, the big blind calls, and under the gun back jams for 107. And now I'm in a bit of a weird spot. I can raise to isolate under the gun, but I also don't mind playing a big four-way pot with queens. I think this hand should progress pretty simply if we get an ace or king on board, so I choose to make the risky play here and trap again, and we end up going four ways. The flop is clean, it checks through, the turn is also clean, so now I bet the other two players fold, and I win versus the all-ins pocket eights. Here the hijack opens, I three bet ace jack on the button and he calls. The flop is ace high. I c bet. I get check raised and make the obvious call. The turn is a 6. It goes check check, and the river is a 4. He bets 150, and I have a bad feeling about this one. It's really hard to put him on a hand. I think if he had a set, he would have bet the turn. It really looks like he has ace 4 though. Maybe it's a worse ace. I make the crying call, but he just rolls over ace 4. In the final major hand of the night, I min open ace 4 suited from early position, middle position calls, and my buddy Dennis min raises back from the big blind. Now, for a bit of context, Dennis and I have had at least 9 or 10 adult beverages at this point, thanks in part to Linda, who's been buying everyone drinks. In fact, most hands this episode, everyone's been drinking. At this point, Dennis and I have become good friends, but I've got ace 4 suited, which is a great bluff. It looks like aces, it feels like aces, and Melissa, my lucky dealer from the win, is on this cruise dealing this hand, so I bump it up to 100. Dennis makes the call, and the flop comes queen jack 5, 1 spade. We got nothing but some back doors and a dream. Dennis checks it over to me, I range bet, and he makes the call. The turn is an 8 of spades, giving me the flush draw. He checks, and now something interesting happens.
Bet big. You better bet really big. You make me chase this shit, you gonna regret it. That's not big enough. That's not big enough.
Dennis tells me I gotta bet big. I'm thinking maybe I should size up the pot here, but after some fumbling, I bet 3/4 pot, knowing I'm gonna have to launch it on the river. Dennis calls, and can Melissa bail me out? Yes! Hey, 5 of spades. I'm thinking about what size I want to use here. Do I bet 2/3? Try to get called by a pair? Do I go all in? I'm not really sure. But then Dennis says this.
Dog, I don't know for sure, but I think that just stood your fate. I'm gonna check it. If you have what I think you have, you should just shove all in. I put you on ace king.
I should go all in. I really don't know what to do here. You put me on ace king? Okay, I guess I'm going all in then.
The only thing that's making me a little worried is the spades.
No, Dennis. Don't think about the spades.
Other than that, I think what you beat. But I'd be so sad if I actually called you and won with this. I'd feel like I lost a friend if I called with this.
Oh, no. No, Dennis. No, now I feel bad. Oh, lose a friend, Dennis. Oh, you know what, Dennis? I'm happy you made the fold here. I feel bad.
I could beat the ace.
And in the caribou tundra, in the wild barren land, on the fierce Arctic ice where the polar bears stand, where the trail of the Eskimo hunter is worn, this is the country where legends are born, where the northern lights blaze above a cold Arctic haze, and caribou come to an old shaman's drum. In saloons and in dance halls they talked of the gold. There were stories of fortune, stories of cold. The trail of the weary gold miner is worn. This is the country where legends are born, where they measured a man by the gold in his hand, the speed of his gun, or the dogs he would run. He came here to settle, to build a new land. In her mountains and valleys, in their cabins they stand. The trail of the hardy homesteader is worn. This is the country where legends are born. These fields you see now were broke by their plow, and their children have grown to build homes of their own. And and in the caribou tundra, in the wild barren land, on the fierce Arctic ice where the polar bear stands, where the trail of the Eskimo hunter is worn.
After Juneau, I was too tired to play any poker. I slept for about 14 hours, which brings us to day 6, the day of the $600 main event tournament. The tension on the bubble is palpable. Everyone really wants to make the money, and early position opens for the first time to 5 big blinds. I'm concerned, but I look down at queens in the small blind, and it's just too hard to fold this. I ship it in there, I get snap called, and I am up against kings. Can I find some help here? No. No, I cannot. I get my heart broken by the ladies. That sucked. I don't know why I couldn't find the fold. I think he has ace king or kings or aces. He's never folding. I'm just ICM suicide. Versus the jam. I just pick up 7 big blinds. Just not good. Back to cash. On Sunday, we stopped in Canada in Victoria, British Columbia. We rented some bikes, had some fantastic fish and chips, and rode through Beacon Hill Park, where we saw a couple of deer and visited the world's second tallest totem pole. I played a short session where I caught no hands and celebrated the final night with the gang. In the end, I booked a small win of $343. I fell short of my goal, but I had an incredible time and made some great friends. I'd like to thank everyone at Royal Caribbean and Card Player Cruises, Linda, Jan, Mark, Tiff, Daryl, Beverly, all of the fantastic dealers for making this such a memorable trip and for being so well organized. Um, and not only for allowing me to film this vlog, but everyone was super encouraging and super supportive. Uh, I think it's probably the nicest sub community I've encountered in the poker world. A lot of these folk have been on dozens of cruises together, and they've really bonded together as a poker family. And both Cooper and I felt immediately included in that family. So, thank you guys for the support. Unfortunately, Card Player Cruises is most likely shutting down. It's super unfortunate, but I will be on the last cruise in January. So I'll see you guys there, and thank you so much.